Now, let's welcome our next guest to the news desk. We have Tom Parker, a cybersecurity expert and regular around Dark Reading. He's a longtime contributor, so thank you for joining us, Tom.
Thanks for inviting me, and it's exciting to be here in person. And,
yes.
Away from the screens of our webinars.
I know.
As fun as they are.
Usually
it's nice to see you in person.
Yes.
So yeah, good to see you.
So what are your thoughts? You're a Black Hat veteran, so what is your sort of top line takeaway of what you're seeing around here this year?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of conversation on how some of the newer generation technologies, we were remiss to not talk about AI, right? Is changing the way that we secure our customers, and also the way that that's creating threats for our customers. And I think, as a CTO, I think, we're really looking at where it makes sense, where it doesn't make sense. I think it's not a case of one size fits all. I think there are some really good applications, especially when it comes to workforce improvements. I'm really excited when it comes to the AI space about how we can become more efficient with the people that we do have. And if you talk to most CISOs, they'll tell you that their security budgets, at least from a headcount standpoint, have largely remained flat.
Sure.
So I think it's a really important conversation that we now need to have on what roles can technology, and in particular AI, really help drive that agenda of doing more with the same resources or even less resources.
So from your evaluation, things are becoming more real. There are real use cases.
Yeah,
real...
I mean, there's been a lot of things that we've talked about in the industry. Platformification has become one area, right? We've been talking about the platformification and consolidation of the industry for over a decade now. And I think one of the drivers for that now is the increased need for instrumentation of our security stack, right? We need everything talking to each other. I think we've realized that buying lots of point solutions that don't work together is not really beneficial. It costs a lot more money. It increases the total cost of ownership. Mm-hmm. And so I think CISOs are more inclined now to invest in technologies that take more of a platform-based approach. I think someone asked me the other day, why should I buy log management from CrowdStrike? Why should I buy identity from CrowdStrike? And I said to them, well, 10 years ago, you could have asked, why should I buy endpoint protection from Microsoft or security from Microsoft? And today, Microsoft's done an incredible job of packaging security into their existing licensing models. And it just makes sense for a lot of organizations. And I think the platform players like CrowdStrike, Palo Alto, NetSpy, we're all, I think, going down a path that is going to make security a lot more accessible. Mm-hmm. It's going to make the technologies work together a lot more effectively, even though you may not necessarily have a tech that's part of your tech portfolio within a particular company. I think you're going to see more and more vendors supporting open architectures, because I think bygone are the days that we have these closed ecosystems where there's no good API to integrate with the tech. It's difficult to get the data of the logs into your SIEM. We're entering into an era where there's just a lot of focus around that interoperability of the technologies.
You mentioned two companies, CrowdStrike and Microsoft, and obviously there's been a lot of hubbub around the July 19th blue screen of death incident, which we don't need to recount here. However, many experts that I've talked to in the aftermath of this say something a little bit different, or maybe it's not different from what you're saying, because it sounds like to me you're talking about an argument for more consolidation, an argument for more interoperability. Some experts are saying that in the wake of the CrowdStrike incident, maybe that is an argument for less of that. Maybe it's a multi-vendor universe we're sort of going to retreat back into. Yeah. Does that make sense to you, or?
I understand why they're asking those questions. I think it's a bit ironic, though, because it's almost exactly the same conversation we had 15 years ago about cloud. Should we put everything in the cloud? Should we trust the cloud providers? Are we creating too much concentration risk? And almost completely resoundingly, we've realized cloud is really the future of our technology stacks. Any risks that may exist within moving to an architecture like that, I think have been addressed very well by those cloud providers. And so it really is exactly the same argument. And so, absolutely, I think, the future is security platforms, again, that work well with other security tech that aren't necessarily part of that vendor's ecosystem, but are part of a broader, we're seeing a lot of vendors create like XDR ecosystems and standardized APIs and ways for these technologies to communicate with each other in a way that we just haven't really seen in the past.
Okay. Much of the sort of in the aftermath of this CrowdStrike incident, there was sort of some soul searching going on about having these vendors buried so deeply in these OS systems, specifically at the kernel level. Many people will say, well, they couldn't perform their tasks if they weren't that deep into the system. They wouldn't be able to collect the necessary data. Others are saying, maybe we need to rethink this approach. What is your thought on that?
Well, listen, the EDR vendors are working with what they're given by the operating system vendor, in this particular case, Microsoft. And I think there certainly is a reasonable conversation that we need to have about what the future of operating system architectures looks like, so that you can create a product like CrowdStrike's EDR agent, Falcon agent, that is able to get the information that it needs, that's able to stop process execution when something malicious happens, while not running in a sensitive layer in the operating system that could really bring the whole house down.
Right.
And unfortunately, listen, as someone that's written kernel code a very long time ago, I'll say that it's an arms race. It always has been an arms race with the adversary. We start in ring 3, they go into ring 0, into the kernel, and then try and usurp things that are running in user space. And so it's this constant arms battle. And so in order to stop that continual arms battle, I think the operating system vendors, Microsoft in particular, and I know you're chatting with Microsoft later today, so we'd love to hear their thoughts on this.
Yes.
How we can do better to really partner with and enable vendors like CrowdStrike to potentially make changes to their products that don't potentially carry the sorts of risks that we saw play out.
And what kind of changes would that entail, do you think?
Well, I'm not an operating system architecture expert, but I think that certainly providing, you really need two things, right? You need visibility of the data, process execution, data that's flowing through the kernel without actually being necessarily in the kernel itself. And then you need the ability to influence what the kernel is doing, execution. I think it's really important to note that CrowdStrike's update that caused the blue screen of death was not a code update, it was a configuration file update. And that's a really important distinction when we start thinking about QA and the QA that needs to happen to prevent this sort of thing in the past. CrowdStrike actually released their root cause analysis today, which I encourage everyone that's listening in to go and read.
Yes.
They certainly are making some improvements from the sound of things when it comes to not just testing their code, but again, this wasn't a code problem, right? This was an issue with the configuration, so testing configuration files, before they get pushed out. This is a work in progress, and I think that this could really happen to anyone that is operating at this level and in this space. We've seen it happen before. I think Dave DeWalt was talking about him recalling when this happened to him at McAfee, when they pushed a bad EPO agent update at the time, and so this is a work in progress. I think it's been really great how the industry has come together and not had these massive knee-jerk reactions necessarily, saying we need to go uninstall CrowdStrike, we need to change EDR vendors. I think when was the last time you changed an airline or a hotel brand because they had a breach, right? You don't do it, right? Because it's still a great hotel brand, it's still a great airline. CrowdStrike's still a great EDR company, right? And then certainly they've learned from this, and improvements will be made.
That is a bit of wisdom from Tom Parker dropping, our cybersecurity expert and longtime dark reading contributor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thanks for inviting me.
Yes,
great to be here.
Anytime. See you soon.
All right,
See you soon.